Good evening or good early morning, fellow Plexers. This video is going to be for Josh, who's running Plex on an older Synology DS1618 Plus NAS. It does not have the capability of hardware accelerated transcoding. And Josh is concerned about the new update to Synology DSM, which so far is a manual install that removes Video Station from the Synology ecosystem, and along with that, it prevents Plex Emby or Jellyfin from working unless they're updated to a new package version. Right now, there's not a stable package release that will work with this new update, and Marius Hosting explains the issue pretty well, which is why I'm on his page, and I'll use one of his guides to set up a Docker container of Plex without hardware acceleration. So right now you need a Plex pass to get this file that will work. So if you update your Synology NAS, the package of Plex you have installed will not run. But of course, a Docker container is unaffected, which is why Josh would like to change to Docker before he does the update. And right now the update's not being forced on you, so it doesn't really matter. You could just wait and update your server to a version that will work with a new DSM update and just do that first. That's an easy solution too, because within a week or two Plex will update. But what won't work, if you're a Plex server owner who purposely uses an older version, you will need to retain that older version and move it to a Docker container in order to run the latest DSM update. So Josh can simply wait, because there will be a stable version of Plex pushed to the package center to update to. But if you're using an old version on purpose, this video is more for you. So we've got the package running. Let me go to my web app. You'll see it's an older version. I've got it named uniquely. And let's go into a library. So this is all public domain media. I am going to create a unique collection with just the first few movies. We'll call it test collection. If I refresh the window, oh, maybe I didn't do that right. I can't talk and do things sometimes at the same time. I have to actually click this here. Now if I refresh the window, I'll have the collection tab. So this is just a little bit of custom metadata to prove to you that we've actually moved this package install inside a Docker container on the NAS. And again, we know this server has an update because it's a really old version of Plex. 1.29.2.6364. Alright, so let's go back to the Synology NAS. Let's stop this. So then, if you're a Synology NAS user, the Marius Hosting website has all kinds of fabulous Docker guides to follow. Now this main Plex page shows you a bunch of different methods. You can install Plex from the Synology Package Center, and that right now, if you don't update to the newest version of DSM, that's still this old version of Plex. The second one is to download the official version from Plex for your NAS, and it's not so much by NAS model, it's by either DSM-6 or DSM-7, and then the architecture that you're running. x64 would be for the Plus models or the AMD models, and then there's ARM versions for the different slower file server types of NAS. So the third method is to install the official Plex Docker container, and this would be if you do not have an iGPU, and you can do that as a scheduled task. The next method is for a NAS with an iGPU for hardware accelerated transcoding, and that would be using Portainer. And then the last method is to install with Portainer without hardware accelerated transcoding. So really, this should be labeled with transcoding via Portainer, and this would be via Portainer without transcoding. So we're going to use this third method here. So naturally you'll be following along with it, but I want to show you some highlights. Let me do this. I've got a scratch pad off to the side. So basically what you have to do, if you've never used a container before, you have to install Container Manager from the Package Center. And then you have to go into Control Panel, Shared Folders, and you have to create a shared folder named Docker, all lowercase. And then once that's done, you go into File Station, and inside the Docker folder, you create a folder name for what you want to do. So I do not have any containers running besides Portainer on this NAS. Well, I do have my little test one because I figured this out before I started filming the video, but now that's gone. So if I go back to File Station and I go into the Docker shared folder, this was the previous test container I had running. I can spin that back up even though it's not a Docker option. The application folders are still all here. And here's another test Plex container that could be spun up too. Well, here's the subfolder I need to create this third test Docker container. If either of these are running in Container Manager, it'll interfere with this being created. So the application files are still here for both these containers, but the container itself has been removed from Container Manager. And those are two different things. Application files are here ready to reinstall either of these Docker containers, but the Docker containers themselves have to be removed from Container Manager in order to spin this new one up. So NHW just stands for no hardware acceleration. Let's go back to the guide. So we'll go through this. So he tells you to install Container Manager. You create your Docker folder, and then you create the subfolder named what you're going to reference later on. Then you go to Control Panel, create a scheduled task. And I have to be careful when I do this because it will give away my admin account name for the NAS, so I'll have to pull part of it off screen when I do it. And then you create your own formula based on this. So that's where we'll go to next. Excuse me, let me hit the cough button. So in some of his guides, he shows you how to find your PUID and PGID numbers. Mine just happen to match his examples, 1026 and 100. I'm on the East Coast, so I use the time zone America, New York instead of Europe, Bucharest. And let's see if he tells us how to get the information that you need. Okay, here's the instructions. To find your PUID and PGID number, you'll have to click into this hyperlink, and this is the hyperlink to find your time zone. So Marius covers everything very well. All right, so this is his example. So this is going to be the container name, and you see I've adjusted it to Plex NHW. I've got my proper PUID, PGID, and time zone in. And now this is the path to the configuration files. So he shows the Docker shared folder, the subfolder Plex. Everything to the left of the colon is real structure. Everything to the right is what the container calls that real structure. Think of it as a virtualized path. So mine's just adjusted for the folder name I use, the subfolder name. Everything else is the same. The only confusing part of Marius's examples are the path. So let me break this down. This would be a shared folder named web. This would be a folder in that shared folder named movies, and this is his alias named movies. I never like that because it makes someone who's doing this for the first time think they should have another path that says web, shared folder web, with a separate folder called TV. So I just don't like that. So if we go back to my Synology NAS, to File Station, you see I have a shared folder with a goofy name, Media Originals Media, and that was a point I made for another video. I'm of the mindset it should all be lowercase with no spaces, and here's another shared folder example. So I have sort folders, and then inside the movie library sort folder, I have individual movie libraries, and this was from another video I did showing how MB naming conventions also work under Plex, even though Plex's naming guides don't mention that. So that's why there's all these goofy movie folders here. But ultimately, a library is going to point to this structure. All right, so all we have to remember is this goofy folder, shared folder called Media Original Media. So, his example, shared folder web, folder movies. Mine is shared folder media, original media, and I'm just pointing to that top level. So everything inside that will be accessible to the container. Then again, everything to the right of the colon is what it's going to look like inside of Plex when you add a library. And I'm just calling it Plex look here. And this is where the container comes from, the Linux server Plex container at this web address. So what you do is you copy this formula once you kind of work it out. And if we go back to the instructions, we left off on creating the Docker folder. So then you go to Control Panel, Scheduled Task, and you create a scheduled task, and you basically just follow the instructions. So here's the 3 panels. You can pull that up while you're doing it yourself, and you uncheck this, you change this to root, and I have to be careful because this, when I create a scheduled task, it'll first show my admin account name. Then you just make sure everything matches, and then you go on. So let's do that ourselves. Oh. What did I do? Close the window I needed. All right, so Control Panel, Scheduled Task, and I already have this set up. So let me take it off screen and edit it. So if I was creating this from scratch, I would have given away my username. And there's another part I'll have to take off screen too. So again, root, schedule is just like this, just like Marius gives examples. And please don't email me. I'm emailing notification of whether this is successful to my regular email address. You all see my email address in my other videos at theflashmail.com. I don't really care if you email me there at the other address, but it's best to contact me right through YouTube or one of the Plex groups. Albert Bush in Plexaholics, Plex Pals, or Plex Friends. So I've simply pasted my formula in here. Click OK. Click OK. And now I'm going to fill my password in. And hit submit. And now all I have to do is find the right scheduled task. So it's Plex without hardware. And I just have to choose run. I've got my email opened up off screen. And we can wait for the email to come in. But if I want to, I can just get out of this, go back into Container Manager, and go to Container. And we see we've got a successful container running. So there's the email. Let me refresh my email and pull it over. And you'll see that the task scheduler has completed its task. There's no errors. And generally, if you get an error, it'll be a path issue. So it's pretty easy to figure out what went wrong. So now the container's running, and if I go into Plex, I don't see my server, but it takes a little bit for the container to come up. So if I just keep refreshing, so here's my test server on my newer Synology NAS. Here's my regular server on my unraid 11th gen i5 NUC pointing back to this NAS. So we're not going to see a server because this is a brand new server that's not claimed. And I don't really want to claim it because remember, we are moving the package install over to that. So let me go back here. So now I'm going to go back to Synology, and from the Container Manager Container tab, I'm going to click on this and I'm going to stop it. So the container stopped, and at this point I'm going to go to my local browser, and I have two windows open. I have one to, let me back up here. I have one to Plex Media Server. This is the stop package. So let me click into that, app data, and I'll stop where I see Plex Media Server. This window is in the Docker shared folder, my container Plex NHW. And let me just start here. So if I drill down, I'll see the same Plex Media Server, and this is the new package I just created. I don't want it. At this level, I want to delete that. So that install does not exist, but the structure all does. So if I go back to my package version of Plex, this is non-destructive if you copy this and you don't move it and you paste it here. So luckily it's a small server, it won't take too long. But let me pause the video while we're waiting. Okay, almost done. Well, the time ran out while it was still copying. All right, so now I have two identical Plex application files. So I could start my original package back up and be back in business if I wanted to. Well, now we're going to start the container and see what happens. So I'll go to Container Manager, click Container, click into the Plex NHW, and click Start. So now I can click back on Container, and we'll see that this container is now running. So now if I go to the web app, let's refresh and see what happens. Okay, so now we see it back, and it's got the same name as it did before. Only, and I wasn't sure what to expect, it is an updated version of Plex. It's not the old version, so this was not a success for someone who wants to keep an old version, but it is a success for Josh moving his package into a container and keeping everything intact. So let's show that. Let's go to Libraries, the Movies, and we see our custom collection is here, which is proof that all your custom metadata will go along for the ride. We did not have to claim this server again. And let me see if this will help someone who wants to keep the old server. How did I name this? Hold on, let me pause the video and find what I'm looking for. Okay, so on my YouTube channel, I have this fairly recent video. Plex, how to roll back to a previous Plex version with a Docker container installed with Portainer. So it's not going to show you how to do it as a scheduled task, but you can follow Marius's guide, Marius Hosting's guide on how to set up Plex with Portainer, and then follow this video to reinstall an older version of Plex as a Docker container. And you'll find the old packages here. This is all listed in the description. So this should work for anybody that wants to keep an old version while they're moving to a Docker container. So move your install over and then downgrade your version by following this video. All right, so Josh, I think this should get you going. And the nice thing is, if you have a mistake in the creation of, well, let me use my cheat sheet. If you make a mistake in any of this, and this is where the mistake's going to be, or here, when you get emailed, you'll see what the problem is. So if you're just moving your original Plex server over, just use this that Marius has, and use this. Very simple. And then the path again, I'll just talk about one more time. Everything to the left of the colon is your actual path. So let me bring this up. If I go to other locations and my older Synology NAS. So to the left, it would always be volume 1 unless it was on another volume. And then the actual shared folder name. And then everything to the right of the colon is what it looks like inside Plex. And I guess that's the only thing I didn't show. So on this server, let's add another library. Let's add the kids TV show library. So I'll add a library, TV show -kids. I'll choose next. I'll browse for media. And you see Plex look here. That's the alias to the real structure. And again, like most of my videos show, I'm using sort libraries for each library type. So I'll click into the TV-libraries sort folder. And I had that same old files from a test I did. I thought I might redo it, so I didn't delete all those. And now this is the actual kids library folder. Add. I always named it the TVDB, so we'll change episode ordering to match that. And that's an example of how that path works. Everything to the right of the colon is what you're going to see here. So if you browse for media, you'll see that instead of volume 1 like you would with a package install. Okay, thanks for watching and happy plexing.